This episode contains stories of trauma related to sexual, physical, and emotional abuse, codependency, and addiction. If you or someone you know is struggling or in crisis, help is available. Call or text 988 or chat 988lifeline.org.
Totally right, about that. I think that the best thing that we can do for our children and our children's children and future generations is do, like you've said, get curious and start healing and tackling things. So what point after you left your second marriage did you kind of have your aha moment of, or did you start to feel like I'm needing to do something different? I mean, aside from the marriage part, but like, with your ministry or your career path, what you're doing, like when did you start to develop, what you're doing now? Yeah. Like when did you start that seed? When did you plant that seed?
Yeah. Well, it's just kind of been organic as I've just taken like, what is the next step that the Lord has for me? There's so many days where I feel like I am not qualified for this because of, things that happen, or life is hard and you have to deal with things that you thought you dealt with, and I'm like, oh gosh, like that's creeping up. But what I realize is that if I just keep waiting, I thought, I'll share my story or I'll help people when I am perfect or I haven't figured out. Well, we're never perfect. We're always figuring it out. And I knew that I wanted to help people. And so about in 20, I guess it was towards the end of 2021, my husband, right after we got married, so we got married in 2019, he got diagnosed with cancer.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I was like, really, God? I've finally met the man who just is so amazing and just has been such a blessing in my life and something that I always wanted. And here we are, we're this really scary cancer journey where we don't know if he's going to live. He has to have a bone marrow transplant. And I'm like, really? Like that whole, he won't give you more than you can handle. I'm like, I want to question you on that. But we handled it and we went through it, but we were so fortunate. Like his oncologist was amazing. And she had been a naturopath before she was an oncologist. And I had always struggled. So I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which we'll go into that in an episode sometime, but the body keeps the score. And I believe trauma gets trapped in your body in all kinds of ways, whether it's fibromyalgia, autoimmune, all kinds of different ways that it can present. And I had used chiropractic and acupuncture. Even though I'm a nurse, I didn't really want to be on medications. And so I had gone a real natural way of dealing with things, juicing, trying to eat really healthy, and not always, you sometimes have to have treats, but as much as I could, because I knew I felt better. And I wanted to do that for my husband. And I was, a lot of people think I'm crazy, and I was juicing for him and, every supplement and mushroom and thing but she was happy to help me with it because of her background. So that led me to getting my certification in functional medicine, because I thought, I'm going to come along and help people get healthy, like in their body. And because I'm a nurse, it's a great fit. And so I started out on that journey, and I was like, I don't know, that just doesn't feel like right. And before in my life, I'd be like, why did you do that? Why did you waste that time? Why did you waste that money? But I'm like, no, okay, this was the next, this was a step that I was supposed to take. Yeah. You took the step, wait and see how this unfolds. Yeah. So then I I found that there was something called certified nurse coach. And I was like very intrigued by that. There's even a board certification. So that brings a lot of credibility to it. And so I started exploring that. And then I went through like a 6-month course and became certified as a nurse coach. And I'm like, okay, so, I'm going to help people. They can lose weight and get healthy. And I'm going to use my functional medicine. Something still didn't feel like that was it. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I got laid off at the end of November this past year. And I was like, I had already started seeing like some clients that I was coaching on the side. And what I realized is everybody who was coming to me, even though they were coming to me for like weight loss or other like things that they wanted to improve on in their life, their organization, or they're being stuck and not being able to do that was rooted in something like deeper in their childhood or traumatic experiences. And I started thinking like, oh, there's something to this. Like, if we really want to help people get healthy and mind, body, spirit, like we have to start dealing with trauma. And I was like, oh, and you've had a lot of trauma and you've dealt with it and you've moved through it. And even my own fibromyalgia journey, like it's all encompassing of my nursing experience, my functional medicine experience, being able to speak and talk to people. That was my corporate background. So all of these things have been preparing me for this moment and really to be able to help people, I believe, at a whole new level. And so when I'm coaching, I take a holistic approach. We're looking at all different aspects, but really wanting to identify the root cause, which is what functional medicine is focused on. And so that's kind of the journey that I took of just taking all of these different experiences and just allowing God to show me what he wants. And so when I lost my job, I was like, okay, I either listen to what I believe God's calling me to do, or I go back and find another job in the corporate world, which I had a lot of success. So I could easily do that. And it was a hard transition for me because just like I was saying, you deal with something and you think, oh, you've overcome it. Well, for me, my job and my success there gave me a lot of value and self-worth. And I was like, and financial freedom, and I could rely on myself. And I was like, if I didn't have a man, I can take care of myself, And so I had to kind of work through those feelings and emotions to even allow me to get unstuck from that, oh, I want to go look for a job, and go forward in this. So I share that just to say, like, we're on a constant journey of like uncovering things that keep us stuck in order for us to be able to move forward into what we really feel called to do. My goal in working with people is to help them move from being in a stuck place to a place where they can thrive and really feel fulfilled. And that isn't always like the success in your job or the money that it brings. Yeah. It could be like what I'm doing, and that's connecting and helping people find themselves, and Absolutely. What they're good at.
So can you tell us a little bit about what makes your coaching unique and your process and some of the services you're going to be offering?
Yeah. So I touched on it a little bit. And my coaching process kind of originates out of my own journey, but also the 12 steps. And but for me, like 12 steps was a little overwhelming. I was like, I can't remember like more than 3 things. So especially when you have a trauma brain, like memory is a hard one. So I'm like, what are the 3 keys that I feel like really move me forward? And so curiosity, and that's what happened, what's going on in your life. So there's just a lot of asking good questions. And I love to ask questions. I love to connect with people and get to know them. So finding out kind of where they're stuck, and then the positive, like, where do you want to go? Right? Because trauma's hard. Negative, like facing your negative feelings and doing something different, like breaking these habits, is hard. So you want to be doing both, like curious about the past, but also curious about what you want to create. And I think we're all creative in different ways. Like, you are amazing at creating like art, photography, video.
Well, thank you.
Like, that is not my gift. Like, I like to decorate, but we all have a creative side. And I think that it's so important to draw on that and to figure out, like, what is it that you want to go for? Because the work's going to be hard. So we need to know, like, what's that reward? Why is it worth doing this? When I was going through the process, it was so hard, and I didn't really believe in myself. I wasn't doing it for me at the time. Now I'm in a different place, but I was doing it for my kids. They deserve better. And so I drew on that strength. And then that allowed me to start dreaming of what might be possible. I said I'm a big dreamer, so I like to dream with people and help them create vision for their life. And so that's why I think curiosity is so important. I think it's the first thing that you have to have.
And it sounds like, if I'm hearing you right, like one of the important things also is like visiting the past to gather information, but not staying there and living there. It's like taking that information and then kind of having your action plan, or then looking forward.
Yeah,
because
creating
it's real.
strategy.
Because if you're not looking forward or making a plan, then it could be really easy to just live in that place and stay in the past. And while we need to acknowledge our trauma and our feelings, like, if we just wallow in it, like, it's not going to make anything better.
In fact, it re-traumatizes you. Right?
We've talked about that before.
And that's why, like, curiosity is, I think, helps to revisit trauma, because if you think about being curious, it's like being an investigator. So you're almost going in as not yourself. You are taking a third-party approach where you're like, what's going on in this scenario? And it helps to remove some of the feelings so that you can actually go back and sort through things and figure out what was that root cause. So I think that's why curiosity, community, whether it's just one person or multiple people. I mean, if you're really brave, I'll tell you, like, getting in a small group of people and sharing your story and letting them love on you is so powerful. But at least letting one person into your life that you can share openly so that they can validate and show up for you in a way that others weren't able to. Now, in my trauma, there were times I made an active choice not to open myself up to people. Now, had I opened up, maybe I would have had a different experience from my family or from people at the church. I didn't give them the opportunity, so I don't know how that would have been. But when we don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we just put walls up and we can't heal. And so by being in a relationship with someone and sharing your story, and then being able to validate it and meet the need of love and connection that was not there, you can heal that trauma. Because trauma is not the actual event. Trauma is not having the ability or the support and love, connection to be able to process that negative event. That becomes the trauma.
Yeah, I've read, and I think we've talked about before too, that we can go through a very stressful event or something that's, most would consider traumatizing, and not become traumatized because but if we're able to process it, and it's when we freeze and are unable to process is when it becomes trauma, which I think is it's so interesting. And I think maybe we were talking about that recently, and then I really started thinking back in time, because I've also had some trauma, and there's some things though that I really thought would be more of a theme, recurring theme, that haven't been. But I think it's because I had the support for some of those things, and I was able to get those feelings out. Now, when you are working with clients and coaching, and you're encouraging them to, heal in relationship, are you talking like as any relationship on the table, or are we talking romantic relationships, or like if you're working with a woman, are you encouraging them to find, another maybe woman that's like a safe person? Like how, like what are kind of your qualifiers when you're trying to help them
decide who their community should be?
Yeah.
Well, first they've already made an effort to create community and share their story because they're working with me. But what I tend to suggest in the beginning is at least a good friend that you feel safe with, that you've never shared, that you do that. Because taking action, like you said, is, we've been in fear, we've been running from it, and now we're confronting it. And so you want to do it in a place that is going to be safe. So we talk about that, like, what's the history with this person? Are they part of your trauma? Like my kids, when we were working through stuff in their lives, like I'm not the one who's going to bring them freedom because I created trauma in their lives. So that I'm not really, even though I've changed, their experience of me is still traumatic in a lot of ways. And so they have to have others. So knowing that, talking to them, if they're willing, I really think getting a group that is specific to whatever your issue is. If you're a codependent, being with someone, if abuse, be with someone, because they know what it's like. And you can rely on them to help you navigate. Like if you've seen that they've been able to move their life along, like I trusted Shelly because she's been able to have proof that she's been moving her life forward. It's not always perfect, just like mine's not always perfect, but you see that they're moving forward. So you don't want to get like in a relationship. I had friends that we would talk and ruminate and hate on and we weren't moving anything forward.
Yeah.
So you want someone who's also willing to challenge you, which can be hard, because that's one of the things I love about you. Like you will be honest with me and say like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? Or would you consider doing this? And because I trust you and I feel safe with you and I know your heart, I'm like, I don't go into a defensive mode.
Well, right? I'm able to do it. I'm able to do it because I feel safe with you.
Right. So that's the important.
And honestly, it's been a journey for me to be able to be a little bit more bold and have the confidence, to maybe make suggestions on things or be vulnerable because I spent so much of my life stuck in that freeze mode from trauma and feeling, that imposter syndrome and feeling like I wasn't good enough. And, a lot of that stems from, like I said, my own trauma with being bullied by girls and, well, it's not my story, but yes.
You are going to be in the hot seat.
Maybe for another day. But yeah, so I am just so thrilled that we get to work together and that we get to be friends and
well, and I just want
to
say
help others.
The third thing is compassion, right? And but what you're
getting ahead
showing
of
there,
us.
but what you're showing is that safety and that compassion, and when someone is loving and kind, like how much easier it is for us to open up. And then when they're compassionate with us, we can be compassionate for ourselves. You know, one of the things with most people who suffer with trauma and are people pleasers, perfectionisms, which are just the effects of having a trauma, is that they're very critical of themselves. There's so much negative self-talk, so much shaming, that when you start talking about self-compassion and speaking truth to yourself, it's so foreign and not easy to do, that by having it modeled, and that's again, community, someone modeling it for you, giving it to you, gives you an example of how you can do that for yourself. And so that's just, I thank you for sharing how it goes both ways in our relationship, and how that compassion is such an important part.
Well, and I think that, part of it is too, is, since the first time I met you, I felt like I'd known you for forever. And I just, felt a strong connection, but, I think of some of that is really rooted in, but possibly our history of trauma, but then also, we're both empaths and have some similar personality traits. Right. And we both have always felt this strong, desire to help others. I can remember being young, going to church, and a lot of times I was actually home when I was praying, but if I go to church, coming home and praying and just, God, like, what's your plan for me? Like, use me, like, I want to help. Like, what can I do? Like I was the youngest and always kind of felt like I was just like the odd man out, with older siblings, and always I just wanted to help. I just wanted to be able to make a difference. So
we were just getting ready to,
we were talking about compassion,
close ourselves out, and
self-compassion that was what I was going to say. It is hard. I have been going on my own healing journey, and that I've been seeing a counselor who is also kind of like a coach prior to meeting you. And, at the end of a lot of our sessions, we do EMDR sessions, and he'd always, I want you to say something good about yourself. And there's a lot of that. He's like, come on, there's got to be something you think is good about yourself. Yeah. And it's so strange that it's so hard to say something good about yourself. But, when maybe you didn't hear a lot of good things in your life, and then you have confidence issues. And so, but I've gotten so much better at, I feel like it is a compound effect. We talked a lot about the compound effect, and it's like small things, even if it's, in a whole year, if every day, or even if it's once a week, you say something nice to yourself, by the end of the year, like, so let's just say it was once a week, that's 52 times you said something nice to yourself that maybe you never did previously in your life. Yeah. And then when you start having that self-compassion, it rewires your brain, it rewires our nervous system. And so I'm so thrilled about what you're doing, and helping people break this generational trauma cycle, and it's just very exciting.
We're doing it.
We're doing it together.
Well, okay, and
it's so great to be so aligned on this, and I'm really excited. So, and then I think I remember that you also have a guide, like a starting guide. Yeah,
so you can get on my website. It's a great place to start. It's the Inner Child Healing Guide. It's about 30 pages that kind of helps you to understand, I always thought, woo, inner child, like, what is all this? But it kind of walks you through and explains about our inner child, about these wounds, what are some signs, and then tools to kind of help you transform those. And so then it has some worksheets. So you can go to the website, download that, and get it to your inbox. And when you do that, you can also get our podcasts to your inbox and the blog. So there'll be a blog once a week, and it's an article that will help you to kind of educate yourself on tips for transforming your life and what is trauma. And then there will be a worksheet or something that you get to kind of complement whatever the blog's about. And then the podcast. So I'm super excited for, we have a great lineup of guests, all different experiences, from deaths of children, spouses, a close family member committing suicide, infertility, adoption, like all of these things, there's hard things that we have to navigate.
There's
so
going to be some really hard stories.
Yeah. But the hope of being able to move through that and then seeing how God can use it and how he's using these people's stories to make a difference. And I hope that gives people the hope and inspiration to do their work.
Well, Megan, thank you so much for sharing your story and being vulnerable today. It's really excited about the work you're doing and all the women you're going to be helping. It's just really, really exciting.
Well, thank you for being here with me and making it a lot easier for me to tell my story. I hope that each of you can see that it isn't easy to be vulnerable, but when you can do it with someone, that it does make it a little bit easier. And likely you are listening to this podcast because you have your own story and you're either struggling, stuck, or maybe you've even made your way through it. And I'd love to hear from you. So reach out. I'm always looking for people who can share and be on my podcast. But also I would ask you, if you know somebody who's struggling, who could use the encouragement, that you would share this podcast with them, follow along on my social media so that you can share resources with people in your life that could benefit. Thanks so much for coming along on my journey. I can't wait to share the stories to come. This podcast is intended only for educational, inspirational, and entertainment purposes. The purpose of this podcast is not to replace the counsel of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. If you or someone you know is struggling or in crisis, help is available. Call or text 988 or chat 988lifeline.org. New podcasts every Friday. Listen and subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts. If you're ready to start your own transformation journey, visit meganbabcock.com.